Hey guys, so today I wanted to talk about some makeup products that are bestsellers at Ulta, according to Ulta's website, that I actually don't love. The concept of bestsellers is always interesting to me. Many of these products I definitely do believe are actually bestsellers at Ulta. Some of them I'm like, I'm surprised, but let's go ahead and get into it. I've got a whole mix of face, eyes, lips, and the way that I went about compiling this list was I went to the makeup section on Ulta's website and then went by each category. So face, eyes, lips, and then sorted that by bestsellers. So I just looked at the whole first page of bestsellers for each category. And yeah, I just wanted to talk about why I personally don't love these products. I don't really think they're the best that Ulta has to offer. So the first product is a best-selling lip product, and this one I definitely do believe is truly a bestseller because it's kind of just been one of the main brands that make this type of a product for a while, and it's the Stila Stay All Day Liquid Lipstick. Now, I've only tried one shade of this, and it is the metallic version, and I do love the shade, but it's mainly the formula that I want to talk about because this is just kind of your average run-of-the-mill liquid lipstick formula. It does feel pretty drying, and it wears off in the way that a traditional liquid lipstick often does, where you just kind of end up with this line where the product kind of starts to fade away, and it just doesn't look the most flattering. Now, I do still wear this lip product, and I enjoy it for certain occasions, but I would not say that this is one of my favorite liquid lipstick formulas by any means. I feel like liquid lipsticks have advanced quite a bit since this came out, but it seems like they are kind of stuck in the past when it comes to liquid lipsticks, because I do think that liquid lipsticks can be very comfortable and less drying than kind of your typical one. So I wasn't surprised to see it on the bestsellers list, but I just think there's better out there, and I don't personally love this formula. Another best-selling product at Ulta came as no surprise to me, but it's the Too Faced Better Than Sex Mascara, and this has been kind of a cult classic for a while now. It's been a while since I've tried this one, but I don't think I would like it if I tried it again now either. It has one of those sort of hourglass-shaped brushes. It was kind of the first mascara, or at least the first very popular mascara with this type of a brush that I know of. And I know a lot of people love this one, but the issue that I had with it is that it smudged and kind of flaked on me, and I usually am not one to have that problem with mascaras. So that was one where I just didn't get the hype. And like I said, that was a few years ago, so maybe they've updated their formula, but a lot of people have told me they had the same experience with it. So that's one that I'm just like, why is that still a bestseller? Like, there are just so many better mascaras out there. And a similar mascara I'll go ahead and talk about, this one I was a little bit more surprised to see on the bestsellers list, was the ABH Lash Bag Mascara. And the reason I was surprised to see this is because I didn't even know this existed until I just happened to get it in the sultry vault that I bought last holiday season. I don't feel like I hear anyone talking about this in the beauty community. Now, I do think there is quite a bit of a divide between the online beauty community and just your average everyday consumers. So I think I can believe that it would be a bestseller because I know that Anastasia is a very reputable brand for a lot of eye products, like brow products, eyeshadows, and so I think it makes sense that while someone is picking up an eyeshadow palette from them or a brow product from them, they might go ahead and pick up their mascara because they trust the brand. But my experience with this was similar to the Too Faced one in that I liked what it did for my lashes, but I just had a lot of smudging with it, and I just think for a high-end mascara, there's just no excuse to have smudging because I've got a lot of drugstore mascaras that haven't done that to me and that I like just as much what they do for my lashes. So that was another one that I don't really get. I mean, I get why it's a bestseller, but at the same time, I'm like, there's just such better out there. All right, let's talk about an eyeshadow palette bestseller at Ulta. I'm not at all surprised that this is a bestseller, but it's the Urban Decay Naked Honey palette. This palette I bought, and I thought I was gonna love it, and for some reason, I just was not as into it as I thought I would be. And I ended up decluttering it earlier this year. I thought that the formula of that palette was good, like I would give the formula a thumbs up, but for some reason that combination of colors just didn't speak to me. It wasn't quite as like golden and yellow as I was hoping for. It was very bronzy and orangey and brown, and I felt that there were quite a few overlapping shades or shades in the palette that were so similar to one another that it just felt like, I don't know, it just felt uninspiring to me. So I really didn't love that one, and I was disappointed because I thought I thought I was gonna love it. I don't know why I bought it. I did get it on a really good sale, so I'm glad that I didn't pay full price for it, but I don't really get why people like it. I guess it's just a little bit too bronzy and warm, and I also feel like those kinds of warm, like brassy tones just weren't that flattering on my skin tone. I feel like those types of shades are kind of hard to pull off, but I know a lot of people love it, so maybe it's just me. Another Urban Decay Naked palette I decluttered at the same time, I think it was the same time that I decluttered the Naked Honey, was the Naked Reloaded palette. And again, there was nothing wrong with this palette. There was like a shade or two in there that I felt was really just bad quality, but most of the shades were fine, and it was a nice, just everyday color story. I did like the color story of that one better than Naked Honey once I had it like in front of me in my hands. I like that it had like a peachy color in there. It was actually very similar though to my ABH Sultry palette, and it just does not compare to the quality of Sultry. Yeah, I just think that the quality of the shadows in Naked Reloaded were not up to par with other high-end formulas, and even with other Urban Decay formulas. It was just kind of so-so, and if I had a much smaller collection, I probably would have kept it because it was useful to me, but I just didn't need it given the other palettes that I have. So that's another one that I definitely understand why it's a bestseller, because everybody recognizes the Urban Decay Naked logo, and a lot of average consumers who are just looking for a good work-appropriate eyeshadow palette or everyday type of palette are gonna go straight to the Urban Decay Naked palettes because they're full of very wearable, neutral colors, and it's just a formula that a lot of people trust. So I get it, I totally get why it's a bestseller, but I just think, having tried a lot of eyeshadows, I just feel like there's much better palettes out there for the same price or less. Oh, another ABH product I wanted to briefly talk about that I just didn't like. I can understand why it's a bestseller because same reason that I mentioned for the mascara, I think people just recognize and trust the brand. But the ABH eye primer, I was not impressed with. It's a very thin formula. I actually decluttered this. It's just been sitting in my declutter pile waiting for a home. Hopefully a friend or someone will want this. I think some people might like it, especially if you're not prone to extreme creasing or fading with your eyeshadows, but I just found that my eyeshadows creased more with this than with other eye primers, so I wasn't a fan of that. I just have the mini, and it hardly came with any product in it, although I'm sure it would still last you a while because you only use a little bit of eye primer at a time. But I also just wasn't a fan of the very like thin, liquidy formula. But the one thing I did like about it is it did have a good amount of coverage for an eye primer, so if you want to really cancel out any kind of discoloration on your eyelids or just start with a very blank slate, this is good for that, but I just didn't really like anything else about it. Alright, I've got two drugstore concealers that are bestsellers at Ulta that I personally just do not like. One of them, this I actually also decluttered a few months ago, and I'm still looking for a friend to take it off my hands, someone that's pale enough to take it from me, but this is the E.L.F 16-Hour Camo Concealer in Light Peach. I do think there is a market for this type of concealer. It's very high coverage and very matte, so if you're into that type of concealer, I do think this is a good one to check out. This shade was also too light for me, so that might have been part of the problem why I didn't love it, but I just prefer something a little bit more hydrating. You know, I do have some fine lines under my eyes, as most people do, and I just feel like this is not the most flattering or comfortable to wear. And now that I've tried the E.L.F Hydrating Camo Concealer, I just love that one so much more than this. That's actually my favorite concealer. This one is just and I guess I understand why it's a bestseller, because I know it's quite popular on YouTube, and it does have a really nice shade range, I think, so that's another great thing about it that I think would make it sell more, because there's more options for people. But I just feel like I'm betting a lot of people who have bought this ended up not liking it for the reasons I mentioned. In fact, my friend Jess actually told me that she tried this and also had the same feelings about it that I did. It was a little too thick and just like, I think she said it made her under eyes look a little bit bumpy. I do wonder, because it is a bestseller, a lot of people buy it, but I do wonder how many of those people who buy it actually end up liking it and maybe like repurchasing it over and over again. Alright, another drugstore best-selling concealer that I like a little bit more than the E.L.F one. I don't dislike it enough to declutter it, but I don't love it. It's the Milani Conceal and Perfect Longwear Concealer. This is just so dry to me. It's not quite as high coverage as the E.L.F one, which I think is why I can get away with it a little bit more easily, just because it's not going to look quite as cakey, but I am wearing this on my under eyes today, and it does have good coverage, I will give it that, but I just don't enjoy the texture of this. It's just not as creamy and hydrating feeling as a lot of other concealers that I've tried. And I also find that I have a tendency to get some texture kind of in between my under eye concealer and the foundation on the rest of my face. So I have to be really careful as I'm applying it and then going in with like cream cheek products that I'm not like accidentally disturbing the concealer placement, because sometimes it can start to like move around and just look weird kind of around the edges. So not in love with this. I will use it up. It's not the worst, but I just think there's better out there. A product I was somewhat surprised to see on the bestsellers list of bronzers was the Undone Water Bronzer. I think, correct me if I'm wrong, because I'm not really on TikTok, but I think this might have gotten popular on TikTok at some point. So that might be why it's a bestseller. But I just find this bronzer a little bit tricky to work with. This is actually on my current like chopping block of kind of products that I'm trying to decide if I'll declutter. But this, so it looks very dark. It does not go on this dark. There's a swatch of it. It's more of like a sheer tint. But you can see here, I have the shade Baked. And this shade, at least, is very orangey. I think this is the lightest shade. I just don't see this shade being a favorite for a lot of people because it's so orange, and most people don't want a very orange-looking bronzer. The other thing I've noticed is, actually, when I applied this in my chopping block video, I don't think it went on patchy or streaky. I actually was able to apply it pretty easily for some reason in that video, but I kind of feel like that was a fluke because most other times that I've used this, it just ends up looking kind of streaky, whether I apply it directly to my face or onto a brush first. But I feel like with any stick product, you should be able to just apply it directly to your face and then blend it out. Otherwise, what's the point of having it in a stick format? But I do really enjoy the water highlighter. That is a much different experience than this for me, but the combination of the really orange shade and how difficult it is to use, I just feel like it's not that good. Now, if this did go viral on TikTok, I could see why it became a bestseller. But same thing, like I said, with the E.L.F. Camo concealer. I just feel like I bet a lot of the people who bought this might have been disappointed or didn't end up liking it as much as they thought they would. But that's just my theory. I don't actually know. Does anyone have this and actually like it? Because I would like to know. And if so, how do you apply it? And what do you like about it? I just threw it on the floor. Speaking of bronzers, another best-selling bronzer that I did not like. I definitely understand why it's a bestseller. I know a lot of people love this one and swear by it, and it is a favorite for many, many people. But the Physicians Formula Butter Bronzer was not my jam. It was, I know they've come out with more variations and shades now, although their shade range is still really narrow from what I've seen. But I'm talking about just the original butter bronzer. I think I actually had the original. Did I have the original shade or did I have the light shade? I don't remember. Either way, it was one of the original in the original packaging, and I just found it way too yellowy of a tone. And I just can't do like super yellow bronzers. It's just not for me. The smell of it didn't bother me. I kind of enjoyed the scent. I don't mind a scented product like that, but I didn't like the undertone, and I'm just surprised so many people do, because I felt like maybe it was just the way that it mixed with my skin tone, but a lot of people told me they felt the same about it. It was very warm, but in a yellowy sort of way that I was not into. But if you have a warm or yellow undertone, then maybe that would be like your holy grail. Another bestseller that I was kind of surprised to see on the bestseller list from Milani was their Rose Powder Blush. They've got a few shades. I had the shade Romantic Rose. I finally decluttered it. I had that blush for so long, but I came to realize the longer I had it that it was not very good compared to most drugstore blush formulas. I just found it very dry. I think at the time that I initially got it, there just weren't as many blush options on the market, and that did seem like a good formula because I just didn't have much to compare it to. But now I just think the drugstore has come such a long way in their powder blush formulas that that one was just kind of, I don't know, it was just very dry, very chalky. It also got hard pan pretty easily, so one thing it did have going for it though was that it came with a massive amount of product. I think it had like the most grams of product of any blush I've ever seen, so really good value. And I like the shade, but there's just better out there. So those are some best-selling products at Ulta that I just don't really see the hype. I don't love them. They're just not for me. If you have any of these products, I would love to know how you feel about them. Do you agree with me? Do you disagree with me? And also, would you like to see the opposite of this, best-selling products that I love? Because I definitely have quite a few of those as well. Let me know if you'd like to see that. But otherwise, if you enjoyed this video, make sure to give it a thumbs up. Subscribe to my channel. I upload 3 or more videos a week. If you want to see even more of me, I do have a Patreon now, link down below. I'd love to hang out with you over there. And otherwise, I hope you have a great rest of your day, and hopefully I will talk to you in my next video. Bye.